Monday afternoon, 10 Tampa Bay Chief Meteorologist Bobby Deskins here. Let's talk tropics. We have, clearly, as you can see, a little bit of activity out there. Nothing threatening Tampa at this particular time. So that's really the good news. We do have our fourth named system. Dexter is out there, and Dexter is just going to be a fish storm. So nothing really important about that one either. Good news is it stays north of Bermuda too, so that's really good. Kind of check a name off and then move on to the next. We do have a wave that we're going to be watching that's here in the, well, it's kind of like what we had with Chantal, right? This same area east of Florida, southeast of Georgia and South Carolina. Remember Chantal went up into Myrtle Beach here? Could be doing something almost exactly like that as we get into the end of the week. Yeah, probably Saturday, Sunday, Monday time frame. I'll show you that coming up. And then we've got a wave coming off of Africa here that the models, some of them are jumping on it and then trying to recurve it, it looks like eventually. That has about a 50% percent chance of developing, basically in the extended forecast. All right, and then we've got a 30% chance for the one that's right here along the southeast coast. So we'll show you a little bit of cloud cover there. You can see Dexter up here moving its way out of the area. And then you've got basically, let's do this. Then you've got our system that really isn't anything yet. See these clouds? That's not really anything yet. This is the area that will drift off towards the north and the west, and that's when we'll watch from later this week. By the end of the work week, I think, when we'll see more of a chance for that, probably Thursday-ish. Okay, so maybe not the end. And then it's tough to see a little wave that's coming off of here now. It's right there. And then that'll be the one that the models try and pick up on a little bit. So let's start with Dexter. Dexter has winds now 45 miles per hour. It's a tropical storm. We named it last night at 11 o'clock. It has a little bit of wind shear. You can kind of tell that. You see the west side here is pretty clear. You see this lower level rotation, those clouds there. So the center is getting the convection sheared off as it moves off to the north and the east. It almost looks like the center is completely exposed now. Yeah, either way, I mean, pressure's down to 1,002 millibars. It's nothing. It's moving to the northeast at 14. So this is going to be moving off pretty quickly to the north and the east. Here's the forecast from the National Hurricane Center. It has 45 mile per hour winds. Now, despite that shear, and I mean, it doesn't look good, but they're going to go ahead and give it 50 mile per hour winds for later tonight. Tomorrow night, we're talking 50 mile per hour winds. They're just going to kind of keep it there all the way through Thursday. All right, Thursday afternoon. The water temperatures are cooling the further north it goes, so this will eventually become extratropical. But you can see it's going to stay south of Nova Scotia. There's Bermuda right there on the bottom side. So this thing stays way out to sea, which is great news. And then even then, as it gets into the North Atlantic, it's really going to dodge most things. And it's relatively small in size, too. So nothing burger. But it does take the name, and you know, we're going with those forecasts from the beginning of the season, how many they thought would happen. All right, so now there are the forecast models. Really good agreement with these as to where it goes. There's a little bit of split at the end, which is totally normal. But the good news is getting it in between Halifax and Bermuda obviously is not going to be an issue, and so it should stay out for sea for just about everybody. All right, now back to the bigger picture. Let's do this one. All right, so nothing here now. We actually have an old frontal boundary sitting in here. And that is something that we normally watch when we're sitting here, but it's not out over the water, although the tail end's starting to get there. But it's nothing that we need to be concerned about here locally, at least not yet. But you're starting to see some of these clouds, and you're going to end up getting some other moisture kind of mixing in. And I think a lot of this is just going to drift off towards the north and the west. The area that we're concerned about for possible development is going to be right here, northeast of Grand Bahama, right in this area in here. All right, and then that will drift off towards the north and the west. Most of the modeling's not doing anything major with this, if anything at all, right? There's just not doing too much with it. This is the European forecast model. Let's go out to this Wednesday. I'm going to stop at around 10 o'clock, and there you go. That is what it's seeing, okay? It has a closed low there, temporarily at least. But I also have the winds here, the surface winds, so you can see the winds kind of going all the way around this. And that's one of the criteria, right? We want a closed low, which is this white line that you see here. And we want those winds to go all the way around it. And that's what we're thinking by probably Wednesday afternoon, if not into Wednesday evening. So at that time, we could have a depression, maybe a storm on it. That looks a little weak to me. But either way, we could have a track, okay, by Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday evening. So especially if you're watching from up here in the Carolinas, because it does look like it's maybe Georgia and the South Carolina, and then eventually up into North Carolina, as more as a rainmaker than anything else. This is the European model again, okay? So now let's go out to Thursday or Friday, midday. Now look at that. That's a big difference. Okay, much more moisture wrapped all the way around it. You can see the closed low here. Obviously, we've got winds wrapped all the way around as well. Outer rain bands up into the Carolinas late Thursday into Friday in North Carolina, obviously in the Myrtle Beach as well. And then as we go through Friday evening into Saturday afternoon, that's when at least the European model thinks that whatever this is, I mean, the weather patterns tend to repeat themselves quite often, and this is very similar to Chantal. So you could almost say, oh, okay, Myrtle Beach gets this early Saturday morning, something like that. The timing's going to change. We don't know yet, but just showing you what this model says. Ton of rain, though, is going to be on the north side of this. All right, and so let me back up just a little bit. Let's go back out to Friday. So by the end of the week, there's a lot of rain here along the Grand Strand and moving up into southeast North Carolina, even the southern Outer Banks. At least some outer rain bands swinging through, right? There will be a tornado threat on the northeast side of this as well. That includes Morehead City, Atlantic Beach, all the way down to Wrightsville in the Wilmington area, okay? So, including the Outer Banks. That would be Friday night, Saturday. All right, so let's go out to Saturday afternoon. This is 2 o'clock. You can see all the heavier rain that's across North Carolina and now already into Virginia by that time, okay? And then if we move this up a little bit, that's D.C., Sunday night, Sunday afternoon, and Monday morning, rainmaker mainly, right? But then you get it up into New York and into Boston, late Monday night, Tuesday, and the Tuesday night. And we know we just saw all that heavy rain that went through New York City, and they had all that flooding in the subway. So this is tropical moisture. That's a lot of rainfall if that happens. So something for them to watch. And then it's up and it's out, okay? This is the GFS model, and I didn't put some stops here, so let me go ahead and grab this for you. Let's come back out to Wednesday evening, right? So you remember the European had something here east of Florida. It's not really showing a whole lot, but you see that there? Right in there, south of Wilmington, right there. Here we go. Let me back up. Right there. That is one of the areas that we're watching, okay? So it's very weak with this, right? You don't see a bunch of lines and a bunch of circles indicating a strong hurricane or anything like that. You barely even see a depression at this point. But watch as we go into Friday morning. I'll back this up a little bit. Thursday morning, see the rain in North Carolina, especially South Carolina. That's Friday morning. And you see the low is right there off the Carolina coast right there, right off of Charleston almost as we get into Friday night. Okay, and so the heavy rain goes into Wilmington. You see it rotating through eastern North Carolina, and then it's moving off to the north as well. All right, same deal, kind of runs up the coast, although the devil will be in the details because there is a front coming through, another front. They had a great front for most. In fact, the front made it all the way through Atlanta, which is wild for this time of the year with cool air, 50s and 60s in western North Carolina, all the way down to Atlanta. Atlanta was in the 60s yesterday, just amazing. But there's another front coming through, and that'll help to pick this thing up and take it out. So the devil's going to be in the details as far as where that goes. I'll back this up a little bit so we can see kind of what Florida looks like. This is Wednesday afternoon. Not a lot for us. We'll get afternoon storms, 40, 50, almost 60% chance. It's not a lot, but a decent chance for afternoon showers and storms trying to push back towards the coast. There's your Friday, Thursday night into Friday, and then Friday afternoon you see pretty decent chance for rain too. So no wind, nothing like that for us, unless this thing really cranks up, and nothing's really showing us that it's going to do that at this point. All right, so now let's go back out to the big picture again, and we'll go out towards the eastern Atlantic. So we're getting to that time of the year where we start looking at what's called the main development region, the MDR, which is this area out in here, all right? And that development comes from storms that come off of Africa. Now, earlier this season, it's been a little bit lower, right? Now those waves are starting to ride a little bit higher, and we need them to get higher if a storm is going to develop there. The further south they are, the closer they are to the equator, the less spin they get. We call it the Coriolis effect. There's basically zero on the equator, and the further north it gets, it starts to spin a little bit, more of that Coriolis, and then that helps these things get together and rotate. So now that the waves are starting to come off a little bit further to the north, and it's kind of tough to see here, but really be talking about this edge that you see right in here. That's going to give it a better chance for some of these to start forming, and that's what they're thinking with this particular one. So let's go out to the European model again, a little different view of it. This is just pressure. So I stopped it here because this is Friday, and there's our little system east of Florida, east of Georgia, okay? So very weak, same thing. I just showed you another version of the model, same model. It's starting to see some pressures coming off here, Now watch as we go just into Saturday afternoon. Now it's got something developing out here, at least a weak area of low pressure trying to develop. That is the seedling of what now has a 50% chance of developing and probably recurving out here somewhere east of Bermuda. There's Bermuda right there. Okay, so that's Saturday afternoon. So right now we've got that area hatched on there, and this thing is just really kind of coming off of Africa tonight and tomorrow, and it'll kind of slowly work its way west of the Cape Verdes, and then we'll see what it wants to do. And this is the European model saying, okay, by Saturday it looks like it does something. All right, now watch that go westward. Look at that, keep going further westward. Now that doesn't look like it's turning to the north like the Hurricane Center has on their little hatched area, right? So it's important to note that, you know, these are just forecast models. Some say it's going to turn, some say it's going to go west. This is the European model. Look at that. That is not up here. That's in the hatched area that the Hurricane Center has. Look where the Hurricane Center has it. They have it there northeast of the islands. See it potentially recurving. Okay, that is not what the European has, right? In fact, by the time you get out towards where are we at here now, this is going to be a week from today. It's got it in the central Atlantic. So, you know, when you see all these things online and these big storms come barreling through Florida or into the Gulf or somewhere like that, just know that that's one model and you shouldn't be showing that 10 days out. So here we go. The European keeps it further to the south. It's just east of Barbados by the time we get to a week and 2 days, a week and 3 days. And then it's into the Caribbean islands. You see it right there over Barbados with a second wave coming off of the Cape Verdes by the time we get towards, again, a week and a half out. So from this, in that time period, you wouldn't look at this and say, oh, I'm in Barbados, I'm going to get a hurricane by, when's this, August 14th, right? No, that's not how the models work this far out in time. What it does is say, hey, it looks like we're starting to get some development, some activity. We're going to have to watch and see if this one does curve to the further to the north or if it comes further to the west. All right, and we've got a week and a half. We've got plenty of time to watch this. Then you look and you see this wave that's coming off of Africa. It's over the Cape Verdes, trying to close off here. And then you kind of say, oh, all right, here we are. We're in the pattern. There's the first wave. Here's the second wave. How long is this going to last? Also, what I look at, and what's really important, I think, for us here in Florida, is what does this area look like? All right, this is the high pressure sitting up here. Okay, so it's kind of like this. And that's the way it goes. It follows around like this. All right, so these storms, that's why the one model says it could curve. But you get something going underneath that high, and the door is open for this to recurve, right? If that green, if this darker green that you see here extended all the way over here, which, look at the beginning, look where it is now, right? Nothing's coming up underneath that thing. But watch how it gets kind of broken down by this first wave, the one that we're going to be watching for South Carolina, this right here. This is a good thing for Florida, because what this does is this lowers the pressures out here and it opens the door for things that are coming behind it to possibly recurve. Right now, it's just a pattern, okay? It's not saying that's exactly what's going to happen, but that's a much better pattern for recurves, fish storms. I mean, yeah, could it get into the Carolinas? Absolutely, sure could. But with that thing backing down as far to the east as it's going to, this upcoming weekend, see, we still have a hole here, right? We still have a little, what we'd call a weakness in the ridge, right? It's not extending all the way over to Florida again. You see it kind of does. See how it does? And then look at it, it breaks down. And that's the key. It's not what it is right now. It's what that ridge will look like when we have a storm there. And when you're looking at forecast models for 13 days out, 12 days out, you don't know if there's going to be a storm there. But you can look at that pattern as to where that high pressure is and what the model runs from run to run have been suggesting. And so right now, I think that's a good thing. Again, I mean, it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it definitely opens up the door for something out here east of the Bahamas, east of the United States. So we'll see if that one happens. That's the Euro model. Let's go. Again, we're talking this easterly wave, right, coming off of Africa. Let's get out to this Friday. Here's where the GFS thinks something is, okay? Here's where they think the other one is. Very weak. Like, you can barely even see it. There's nothing really here. What actually, literally, what I'm looking at is this little hump right here. You see that? See that hump right there? That basically means that the low pressure is sitting right in here. Weak low pressure sitting right in here, and it's barely visible. Okay, so now let's go out through the weekend into Sunday afternoon. Now, look, we got something here. That's really far to the south, by the way. real far to the south. Okay. Meanwhile, the ridge is building back in. Whatever it was moving up through the Carolinas, up through D.C. and up into New York. Weak front coming through, right? Now let's go all the way out, and there's just nothing there. This takes us out through the 14th, and you just don't see anything from this run of the GFS. Now, there have been some runs, and I've seen them on the internet, of this bowling ball coming right at Florida, maybe Daytona Beach and coming up just south of Daytona. Okay, those runs are 12, 13, 14 days out. So that's almost 2 weeks. So today's Monday. If you had a birthday party scheduled for Saturday and I said, oh, it's going to rain on Saturday, you'd be like, that's so far out. They don't know if it's going to rain on Saturday. We'll wait and see. That's 5 days out, 6 days out, 5, right? But if somebody shows you a 14, 13-day forecast model and says, oh, it's going to slam into Florida, you don't believe that, all right? Could it happen? Sure, could happen. Anything could happen in the hurricane season. But that is more pattern recognition than anything else. What that is they want you to click on it and they get money for that. But that's not what we need here, especially after last season when we had all the storms and people see a named storm come up and they don't want to deal with it, right? People are still cleaning up. A lot of cleanup still going on, and so we don't really need anything. And I don't want to show those crazy runs to get people upset about nothing, right? When we get into this 5 to 7 day window, that's when you start paying attention. We get into that 3 to 5 window. That's when you start getting prepared. And we'll have you prepared in that 7 to 10. We'll get you kind of a heads up at that point. We're not even that far out. I mean, we're not even that close at this time. So here's another way to look at it. This is the GFS model, and we're watching east of Florida there. You can see it does try to close off a little low there. Watch this. See that? So it's trying to do that where the Ville is in Jacksonville. So again, very weak low, but this is Friday morning, and you can see the rain's already up into the Carolinas, especially North Carolina. And then Friday afternoon looks like it could be a real rainy situation for them, probably lingering into Saturday at least. Now, this is Monday, a week from today. Now, 7 days out on a forecast model, that's somewhat believable. Okay, this is very weak. It's not even a closed low, but you can see that hump right there. That's a low pressure trying to form in here. Okay, that's 7 days out. Now let's go out just a little bit more. Still trying to close something off here in the Bahamas. Now the European really didn't have this. One of the runs has. We'll keep an eye on it. But that is, excuse me, this is about a week and a day from today. And that's a time frame where, will that happen? We don't know at this point, but that is reasonable. And that is something that you can say, oh yeah, we're going to have to keep watching it for next week. Okay, not this week, at least not that way. We'll be watching this area this week. Okay, but next week we're going to be watching the Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos up in the Bahamas, of course. So say you've got Puerto Rico plans, PR, you want to keep an eye on it. It's just a wave coming through. The Bahamas stand a better chance of something developing in that area if that were the case. Okay, so yeah, this is not exactly going to happen, but it is reasonable at this particular time, right? That takes us out to Thursday, so that's a week and a Thursday, right? A little something here off of Miami, but nothing major. So yeah, well, let's see what happens. All right, Dexter, we have now. Tropical storm likely will stay that and then fall apart. It'll turn extra tropical over cooler water. Stay out to sea. It's not an issue. Aaron, Fernand, and Gabrielle are the next names on the list. And then we'll see. We'll see what happens. Now, water temperature, it's kind of cool out west. It's not cool here, right? What we've seen is the water temperature not get too much warmer than average, but still be warmer than average. And warm water can make showers and thunderstorms grow bigger in the tropics, right? So you take what's normally a warm water and you make it even warmer, and you can make bigger storms. And these make it easier for these storms to form. So the numbers aren't crazy, but 1 to 2. In fact, some places are about 3 degrees above average, but 1 to 2 for most areas. That's where the Gulf is. The Gulf is not that far above average right now, but it is a little bit. And then what we'd be watching is way out here in this MDR region as well to see what that looks like. Then, something gets up here in the Bahamas, what's that look like? That's not that far from normal. Now, wind shear. This is something that has changed. In the last 3 weeks or so, the wind shear has really started to drop off. We had all the way through June and most of July, we had a ton of wind shear, especially down here in the Caribbean. And that has really dropped off. So wind shear would be bad for storms, right? If a storm's coming along and all of a sudden it runs into this wind shear, we get blown apart. Let me go out here to where we are now. Let's remember, look where Bermuda is, right there in the middle, that little dot under the word shear. Just to the north of it is where Dexter is now. And look at that dark blue by the word low. That is wind shear. That is what's blowing all those clouds off of Dexter right now, right? So Dexter's not a good looking storm, but there's not as much wind shear down in the Caribbean, in the main development region right now, although there'll be a little bit more later. And that goes all the way out through this weekend, right? So that's a pretty ripe setup. You've got warmer than normal water, you don't have much wind shear, and it doesn't look like you'll get much wind shear even as you move through next week, although there is some, but mainly south, I think, of the wave train that would be coming off of Africa into the middle of next week. What we do have to try and fight off some of these storms is all this dust. Still quite a bit of it coming off of Africa right now, and this takes us out through this weekend, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. So still quite a bit of dust around. At this point in the game, what happens is if you do start to get things spinning up, a lot of times now they would kind of ingest some of this drier air, some of this dust, and that kind of holds it at bay just a little bit, but then you'll see it wrap it around and kind of really dry it out. But they do have a slightly better chance at this point in the season of at least developing, or at least trying to organize, maybe not develop fully. But you can just hope that you get some extra dust out there to help quiet things down, because that can really quiet things down quite a bit. And again, it's just like everything else. It's just like wind shear. It's just like where that high is in the Atlantic. It all depends on where it is, if you have a storm system. Okay, so things are going to be changing up just a little bit here. We get this updated every Tuesday, so we'll get this tomorrow. And this goes out 2 weeks ahead. So this was last Tuesday they issued this, and they said, hey, we're going to watch this area right in here. And lo and behold, we've got a 30% chance right here, right, going into the Carolinas. They also said that as we get out into August 13th to 14th, remember that's the second wave, we'd be watching out here. And that's what we're going to be doing next week, right? The wave's coming off now. We'll be watching it this weekend in here, and we'll see where it wants to go, if it wants to go further north or come further west. So the Climate Prediction Center is putting this out. This is actually a pretty good little forecast. We'll get an update on this tomorrow. I'm sure the first week will include this. So the Hurricane Center does the next 7 days, and that's this one that you see right here. All right, the Climate Prediction Center does the one that says the pink stuff. That's the next 7 days, and then this is the 14 days and even 21 days. So it's way out there, but it gives you an idea of what the pattern looks like, okay? And like I said, that one worked out, and so did the second one. Okay, that's it, guys. I'll get you back here. We're getting ready to do 10 Tampa Bay at 5 o'clock. Thanks for watching today. We have a couple of showers around here locally. I don't expect a whole lot, at least not today, but tomorrow we'll start to pick up those shower chances just a little bit in the midday hours and into the afternoon. And then I think better rain chances probably towards the end of this week. But I'll be tracking all of that for you, and I'll show you our local forecast models. There'll be more to talk about than any of these